And I just, as I looked at that, and I'm a scientist myself, and I thought to myself, well, and as I read, and I've read more about you, would you describe yourself as an empiricist or an empiric?
Yes, most definitely. And I found my way towards empiricism by actually my own life experience. And I realized truly there is great value in and sort of empiricist approach to life. And personally, I'm very fascinated by philosophy and definitely epistemology. And
Oh.
so the great works of great empirics, they certainly inspire me deeply. And so it is very much also the ethos of our work today.
One of the reasons why I asked that is because when I looked at the definition of what is an empiricist, and it's a person who supports the theory that knowledge is based on experience derived from the senses. I
Right.
thought the website, obviously, when you visit Wikipedia, there's just facts and there's texts. Whereas I thought the Empirics Asia was a beautiful site. You're instantly drawn in to a number of different articles, and overall, I think I read that there was over a million articles. Are any of them commissioned, or are they all just voluntarily sent to you?
So in terms of our work, actually 96% of the articles are entirely produced on a voluntary basis, crowdsourced. And there's a small percentage that we used to have a team of authors that actually wrote for us because we started as a publication.
Okay.
But through it all, there is actually no commercial element to the content that you see. So we don't accept native advertising, nor do you see advertising in any form. It is truly
Hmm.
open access and dedicated towards integrity of the content. So none of it is commissioned by any organization. It's entirely all sorts of submissions from people around the world, different backgrounds. Yeah.
Okay. But so then, out of these million articles, and obviously there are many coming in on a daily basis, how do you go about it? For me, I was thinking with Wikipedia, it's no problem. I type something in, and the information about that, like the maybe an encyclopedia appears. How are you choosing then what appears at the top of the screen? How are you choosing the featured articles, as it were? And is there not an element
So
of non-neutrality once you start making those choices?
So how we try to do it is actually not so much based on subjectivity. I believe, of course, different people have different interests. Matthew, you might have certain interests as a scientist, and I might have certain interests too. However, how we approach it to sort of strike the middle ground is we make all the decisions based on data. So based on the traffic and also the interaction of the users, we identify the key trends in knowledge, and then those are the ones that you see get featured and really pushed up to the top of our platform. And so it's not really a person deciding which one's the best in terms of what's actually featured. It's actually, traffic. And nowadays, with our new artificial intelligence algorithm, we're also using AI to help us detect that trend.
Okay. So it's the readers are almost choosing the lead articles for themselves by being readers almost. Okay.
Yes, and it is difficult because, of course, again, it's sort of this arithmetic that's based on the majority interest. So certainly it won't reflect absolutely everyone, but so far it's been able to appeal to most of our readers, and so for us that's a good thing.
I think I read in your title in Malaysia that you were trying to keep things to be neutral, although perhaps maybe not as neutral as something like Wikipedia. Um, I wonder what you mean by neutrality, because when I listened to again this age of removal of plastic, there's something there about that we have to find. It said finding an alternative to plastics is not a choice. That didn't sound like a very neutral statement. So where do you think neutrality sits for Empirics podcast?
So there is one thing that we have to clarify very clearly is that we're not going for absolute neutrality, because again, the nature of the content that we are publishing isn't the same as an encyclopedia. We're not trying to present the idea that our platform is an encyclopedia and you'll find facts in there. It is actually very much a hub for people to contribute their personal insights, their personal experiences, their personal knowledge, and of course, much of that could also be their personal opinion. And so for us, neutrality really is striking a fine line and allowing democratic access towards contribution of one's own insights, but at the same time, also not not devolving too much to only one area, but allowing everyone to really contribute their views. I think the way to look at it, at least what we're trying to build, is sort of this Hegelian idea of dialectics, the idea that if you have a mixture of all sorts of different opinions, we will arrive closer to the truth than, let's say, just one side. Again, but my point being that based on what we're doing now, we're not trying to be an encyclopedia. So the articles that you will find there, and also ultimately the episodes that might be produced by the AI, it will not sound like an encyclopedia in the sense that we're trying to present facts, but really the overall opinions and conclusions of people based on their works. So for us, how we strike that democratic access to contribution is really, we generally the only thing that we don't really allow is just a few things. Firstly, is that the content itself isn't offensive and frivolous, and at the same time isn't commercially driven. And then, of course, not being entirely nonsensical, then generally we allow it. But of course, the challenge for us is some of the areas might be a bit more technical. So for example, let's say a person writing in the area of, let's say, physics, quantum physics or something like that. Of course, there might be this requirement of us to understand what's being presented is actually valid. But how we go about it is really sort of this reactive process. We do have volunteer people who actually help us in filtering out information that isn't good. But overall, that's really it. We have a democratic system. We're not trying to only present it as facts, but really the opinions and experiences of people all around the world.
I think I can imagine that the collecting of articles is utterly democratic, and it's just whatever people send in. And again, like sort of I said at the beginning, though, how do you go about choosing the articles that will appear prominently on the front page? And do you worry that you might be accused of some bias or a lack of neutrality in those choices that are made?
I think in terms of the article themselves, at least, let's say the weight of the article, so far we haven't really had much issues or really any issues about neutrality, because again, the articles we're not presenting it as, let's say, this is a statement of facts, but really this is the summation of the person's work or their opinions or their knowledge. And so, so far readers, they've understood that at least we're not presenting it as this is how the world works, but really a person's idea of how it works or whatever they're talking about. But in terms of the actual process of choosing what goes on or what's featured and promoted, again, that's very much based on traffic and relevance. Okay. It is very difficult, I think, for us, even if we were to act as some sort of a gatekeeper and choose which one's there, because again, there's a question of whether our editorial team, our editors, are neutral. So we leave all that up to data. But what I've found so far is that, generally speaking, this system has actually worked quite well, because again, most people, in terms of what they find valuable, if a certain content has great value, it tends to, or great relevance, it tends to actually get, read by more and more people than articles that are very, very low quality. So far what we've had, at least in, featured prominently on the front page, has been quite relevant, at least based on the feedback we've received. But not so much an issue on neutrality, at least from our readers at the moment, yeah.